This video is sponsored by Nebula. Denmark just took over the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and their slogan, a secure Europe and a competitive and green Europe. Translation, over the next 6 months, expect the EU to focus on defense, Ukraine, enlargement, migration, and boosting Europe's competitiveness. With a potential trade deal with the US, a strong budget, and efforts to cut red tape, the green way. Migration in particular will be one to watch, because Denmark happens to have some of Europe's strictest laws to curb immigration. But hold on, isn't Ursula von der Leyen the president of the EU? Well, yes, but also no, because this is the European Union, and of course, it's more complicated than that. In fact, the EU doesn't have one president, not even two. There are actually 4. Let's break it down quickly. First up, we've got the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Think of her as the EU CEO. Then there's the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. Kind of like the Speaker of the House, but with more EU flair. Next, there's the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. He's the guy coordinating meetings of national leaders. And finally, brace yourself, because the President of the Council of the EU isn't even a person. It's a country. And right now, that's Denmark. The Council of the EU is one of the EU's 2 legislative chambers. Fancy talk for where the lawmaking happens. And as the President of the Council of the EU, Denmark gets to chair meetings, broker deals between countries, and shape what gets pushed up the agenda. What makes it really unique is that the presidency rotates every 6 months between EU member states. From July the 1st to December the 31st, it's Denmark's turn to set the agenda. Before Denmark, Poland held the presidency, and next up, it'll be Cyprus. So, back to Denmark. What are they actually planning? Let's start with security. The big goal? For Europe to be able to defend itself by 2030.
We have to build an even stronger Europe, a more secure Europe, where we are able to protect our democracies. We have to rearm Europe, and we have to boost our support to Ukraine.
There are 2 key pieces of legislation. First, the European Defence Industry Programme, or EDIP, with a budget of 1.5 billion euros. This is money from the next EU budget, meant to boost Europe's ability to produce its own weapons, with joint procurement and support for projects of common interest, like Sky Shield or the Eastern Shield. Second, the Security Action for Europe, or SAFE, with a budget of 150 billion euros. Now, this isn't regular EU spending, it's debt, raised by the European Commission and then lent to the member states at better rates. It is basically an emergency tool to help countries scale up on defense production fast, buying more weapons, opening more factories, and filling stockpiles. SAFE has already been agreed upon, but the European Parliament is super angry. They've been cut out of the talks and are suing the Commission in the European Court of Justice. That's a headache Denmark might inherit. As for the EDIP, it's still just a proposal, and Denmark wants to get it over the line in the next 6 months. That includes answering a big question. Should countries like the US or the UK get access to EU defense funds? And then, of course, there's Ukraine, Denmark's next big priority. Since the invasion, Denmark has been a powerhouse supporter, pledging 8.6 billion euros in weapons and ammunition. In terms of GDP share, it's the 2nd largest EU contributor, right after Estonia. Bravo, Denmark. You've really earned our respect. But on the EU-wide scene, the Danish presidency is already under pressure. Slovakia vetoed the 18th sanctions package against Russia, causing a major roadblock. The new package clamps down on Russian energy revenues, including lowering the oil price cap to $45 per barrel. And it cuts off financing to more Russian banks, expanding transaction bans. And the crazy thing, Slovakia is blocking all of this over an unrelated dispute about the phase-out of Russian fossil fuels. Prime Minister Robert Fico is asking for financial compensation, and it's now up to Denmark to navigate this mess. And speaking of vetoes, Denmark's got another one to deal with, this time on enlargement, which the Danish official program calls a geopolitical necessity. But Hungary is not playing along. Despite the Commission saying Ukraine has met all conditions to start talks, Hungary is still blocking the opening of negotiations. And then there's the big one, migration.
Security is also about migration, a great challenge to the social balance of our societies. We need new solutions to tackle these challenges.
Once controversial, the so-called Danish model is now gaining serious ground all across Europe. The Danish model combines strict asylum rules, offshore processing, and a clear focus on deterrence and returns over integration. Even Germany's CDU leader Friedrich Merz said that what Denmark has achieved in recent years is truly exemplary, and together we are moving towards new and stricter asylum rules in the European Union. Earlier this year, the Commission unveiled the Common European System for Returns. It's designed to streamline deportations across member states, boost cooperation between EU countries, and crucially, potentially enable returns to third countries. Now, this gives Denmark a golden opportunity to push its own model at the EU level, especially the third country part, sending rejected asylum seekers to detention centers outside of the EU, or even deporting migrants to safe third countries where their application will be considered. And Denmark isn't just talking, it's already doing it. A €200 million deal with Kosovo allows Denmark to send 300 foreign convicts to serve their sentences there, before deportation. That could be the template Denmark now wants to promote across the EU. The next big focus for Denmark is competitiveness. But whether the Danish presidency can actually make Europe more competitive might actually not depend on Brussels, but on a city 6,000 kilometers away, Washington, D.C. Let's talk trade. The European Commission still hopes to reach a preliminary deal with the White House before the 9th of July deadline to avoid a worst-case scenario, a 50% US tariff on European goods. But if the deal falls flat or doesn't happen at all, Brussels is ready to respond with retaliatory tariffs on American-made products. And as the Council President, Denmark will have to help keep all the EU 27 behind the Commission. And that's a little out of character for Denmark, who's usually one of the EU's most pro-trade, free market voices. You see, exports make up nearly 70% of its GDP, with global giants like Lego and Carlsberg flying the Danish flag all across the world. But for Denmark, it's not just about tariffs. It's also about sovereignty. Trump has refused to rule out using military or economic pressure to seize Greenland, a semi-autonomous part of Denmark. And then there's the next EU budget, covering 2027 to 2032. The previous one was worth 1.2 trillion euros and funded everything from farm subsidies to foreign aid and so on. For the next budget, the Commission will publish its proposal on July the 16th, kicking off years of tough negotiations between EU capitals, and Denmark will lead the very first phase of those talks. Now, interestingly, Denmark used to be part of the Frugal Four, along with the Netherlands, Austria, and Sweden. They pushed for smaller budgets, strict spending controls, and no new EU debt. But Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen now says that being part of the Frugal Four is no longer the right place for Denmark. That shift puts Denmark in a very unique spot, as a potential bridge between the frugal North and the spend-friendly South, especially since Germany has already ruled out permanent common borrowing. And finally, there's the push to cut red tape. Denmark says it's fully committed to the Green Deal and insists that sustainability and competitiveness must go hand in hand. But the EU is now pulling a sharp U-turn on its own green rules. The Commission wants to slash environmental reporting requirements, and Germany and France are even pushing for deeper cuts, with Germany also questioning the 2035 combustion engine ban. That puts Denmark in a very tricky spot. They back green competitiveness, but also supporting simplifying EU rules. How they balance both will be one to watch. So, those are the Danish plans for the next 6 months. Personally, I'm really curious to see how their migration agenda plays out, and I'm thinking of doing a dedicated video on how the Danish model could work for all of Europe. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd want to see. If you want to understand Europe better, you're in the right place. We break down the most important EU stories, clear, critically, and simple, but often interrupted by ads. No ads, no algorithm deciding what you should watch.
Wow! 1, 2, 3, 4.
You can watch EU Made Simple completely ad-free on Nebula, our sponsor for today's video. Nebula really is an awesome streaming platform, made by content creators. Some even have their own original series. My personal hot list. First, real life lore and his series War Room. A monthly update on global conflicts that often don't make the headlines, like the one in Sudan. Second, went over the logistics of X, showing, for example, how the US military, as massive as it is, moves an entire army across the globe. It really is insane and an eye-opener. Or Arctic to Africa. Two guys traveling all the way from Northern Europe to Africa by train.
This is our train.
Not exactly a smooth ride, and definitely no comment on the German train system here.
Oh.
And last but not least, what about our channel, EU Made Simple? On Nebula, you'll get all our videos completely ad and sponsor free, and sometimes even early access to new releases or insights into EUMS behind the scenes. Now, if you like our videos, you'll love Nebula, and with our link you get 40% off. That's literally just $36 for an entire year, or $3 a month. So go to go.nebula.tv/EUMadeSimple to sign up. To support us further, consider joining us on Patreon. Thank you so much to our presidents, Jan Schauke Christian Peter HGVD, Daniel Unite Europe, Stefan, and Mr. Probot.